Okay, so we are on Mem Dalet Amud Beis, about 11 lines up from the bottom. Amar Reish Lakish. The first word on the line is Meboy, and then there's an Aleph. A small Aleph is a upper thing. We're 44b2, the bottom of the first column. Amar Reish Lakish. So again, our topic is if a girl was seduced or raped, and then her father dies, or and then she becomes, or she becomes a bogeres. So, in what circumstances will she keep the money, and when will her father keep the money, or when will it's her father's money, but because he died, it goes to his heirs. Which, if she has brothers, it would go to her brothers, not her. So that's cases that the Mishnah was talking about. So Reish Lakish says, and we saw this in the previous parak. Actually, this Mishnah that was previous Mishnah. The current Mishnah we're talking about, if this girl, if she was born, if her mother was pregnant with her when she converted, which laws apply, and also Pesach Beis Aviyah, that for Motzi Shemra, if someone accuses his wife of having committed adultery, and he was correct, and witnesses came and saw it, they would take her to her father's house and do skila by her father's house. So Reish Lakish says, Amar Reish Lakish, Hamotzi Shemer ala Ketana Pater, Shnamar v'nosnu laviha na'ara male, Dibra Kasov. So if someone gives out a bad name, that's what Motzi Shemer literally means, but it means that he's saying that my wife is not a virgin, she must have committed adultery after I gave her Kedushin money. So if she's a Ketana, she has not brought signs of physical maturity yet, he is exempt. So if what he says is true, she gets killed. If what he says is false, he gets lashes and he has to pay a fine of 100 shekel. So if she's a Ketana, he's exempt, because the pasuk says you'll give it the fine to the father of the Nara, and it says Nara with a hay. Because it's a Nara with a hay, it's specifically a Nara, not a Nara or plus a Ketana. Because he holds, Reish Lakish says that when the Torah says Nara without a hay at the end, it means a Ketana. And Nara with a hay means specifically a Nara, not a Ketana. So when we saw this earlier in the previous parak, Maskifla Rav Acha bar Abba asked, and before it was Rav Ada bar Abba, and now it says Rav Acha, Taima Dixiba Hanara, Halav Hachi Havamino Fil Ketana. So Reish Lakish is saying the reason that she doesn't get killed, or excuse me, the reason that he's exempt from the punishment is because it says Nara. Halav Hachi Havamino Fil Ketana. If not for it saying Nara with a hay, I would think that even a Ketana would be subject to these situations and these punishments. So Rav Ada bar Ava, Rav Acha bar Ava asks, Haksi v'im emes hayadavar zelo nimtzu besulim lenara. And if it was true, this matter, and she was not a virgin, meaning really she must have committed adultery, you'll take the Nara to the doorway of her father's house and give her skila. But a Ketana doesn't get punishment. It doesn't get a punishment from Beis Din. You can't get a punishment from Beis Din until you are officially an adult, legally. Ela Kanara, Ha Kamakom Shnemar Nara without a Hey, Afilu Ketana B'mashma. So here when it says Nara, but in general when it says Nara without a Hey, it includes a Ketana. So he argues on Reish Lakish because, according to Reish Lakish's reasoning, the Torah needed to specifically say that if the girl was a Nara, she would get punished. And Rav Acha bar Ada says, or bar Abba says that doesn't make sense, because if she's a Ketana, she can't get killed by Beis Din. So if it's talking about So there's no possibility that it could be talking about a Nara. So he argues with Reish Lakish's premise about Nara without a hay. So here's a very important brisa. Well, I mean, all this stuff is important, but we're going to be discussing for a while. The last word on the third to last line. Tani Shela. Shela taught. So I guess Shela is an Amora. but I don't think I've came across Shayla's name before. Shalosh midos benara. There's 3 levels of anara in case of moti shemra, where the husband says that she wasn't a virgin, so she must have committed adultery. Now, I mean, that's not the only possibility that could have happened. She could have become a mukas eitz. She could have been injured and lost the blood from an injury. Or we learned earlier that there were some families that the girls didn't have blood. Or she could have been raped or seduced even before the engagement, or even after the engagement. It's not her fault. So when we saw some of this stuff in the end of the first parak, but when he says she wasn't a virgin, she must have committed adultery after I gave her the kedushin, then witnesses came and corroborated that and said that they saw that she did commit adultery with someone. So the first one level is bola edim beveis chamia shezinta beveis avia. If witnesses came while after she was married, she's in her father-in-law's house, that she had committed adultery while she was still in her father's house, meaning it was after the wedding, after the chuppah. They said that she had committed adultery before the wedding. They give her skila by her father's house. Kolomar, as if to say, look at what you raised. So Rashi says Kolomar, as if to say, from this house, this embarrassing thing happened. Now, I mean, the Gemara says, makes it sound like it's directed towards her parents. Rashi is deflecting that and saying that it's more like a public statement to the public. But the second case, if witnesses came before the chuppah that she did commit adultery after the kedushin, and obviously it's before the chuppah because the chuppah didn't happen yet, then pesach sha'ir. They put her to death with skila by the gate of the city. So Rashi says, because the pasuk says, when there will be a nara, of a maiden, virgin, or a maiden who is engaged and she commits adultery, you take the 2 of them to the gate of the city. So basically, Shayla is dealing with the following, with a certain issue. One pasuk says that they take her to the father's house. One pasuk says they give her skila by the gate of the city. So he's talking about there's different situations that could happen. So the different situations get killed in different places. And then the third case, Sarchel v'sov bagra tidon bechanek. If she acted inappropriately, meaning she committed adultery, and then she became a bogeres, and so she's no longer a nara, she gets judged with chenek, like the strangulation, the regular punishment for adultery. So in that case, she wouldn't get skila at all, death by stoning. So now, from his statement, the Gemara says the following statement: this implies that when her body changes, the death penalty changes. Because when she's a nara, the pasuk says that a nara who committed adultery before basula gets skila. But now that she's no longer a nara, she doesn't get the special punishment; she gets the default punishment. So that's what the Gemara is inferring from this brisa. Or minhi, but I'll ask a contradiction against this, a mishnah against this, or a brisa that's against this. Nara hamorasa shezinsa. So an engaged nara who committed adultery, and then after she became a bogeres, after she was 6 months past when she brought the signs of maturity, so at least 12 and a half years old, hotila shemra. Her husband said that she wasn't a virgin, and so he was complaining that she must have committed adultery. And then, so who aino loka, the aino nosun measela. If what he said was false, he doesn't get lashes and he doesn't get the penalty of 100 shekel slime. He v'zomamea makdim l'beis skila. And if so, she and the false witnesses will get skila. So, meaning what happens if the witnesses are telling the truth and there's no problem? I mean, there's no problem with their testimony. She's going to be put to death, and in that case, the husband wouldn't be guilty of anything, But if the witnesses testified that she committed adultery to corroborate the husband's claim, and then they were found to be Edom Zomamim, that they were plotted falsely, and really they didn't see anything that they claimed to be testifying about. So then the husband is guilty for the false claim. And the witnesses get skila because they were trying to give skila to her. So they get kasher zamam, they get the penalty that they were trying to give. So the Gemara says, is she and the Edom Zomamim going to get killed? That doesn't hit. If the Edom were true, then she gets killed and the Edom don't get killed. If the Edom lied, so then she doesn't get killed and they do get killed. So the Brisa means either she or the Edom Zomamim would get put to death at skila. Because it can't be both. Because if the Edom were true, then she gets put to death. And if the Edom were Edom Zomamim, she doesn't get put to death because we don't have any testimony against her, and the Edom Zomamim get put to death. So the question is, from this brisa, we see that even though it's the case was that she had become a bogeres, and it says she gets skila. So that brisa says that even though she became a bogeres, she remains with the death penalty of skila. And Sheila's brisa said that if she became a bogeres, she gets chenek. She gets the regular default death penalty for adultery. So how do we reconcile these two brisas? That one says when her body changes from a nara to a bogeres, the death penalty changes to the regular death penalty of a bogeres, and this brisa that says that once the adultery happened when she was a nara, she keeps that special death penalty of a nara of skila, of being stoned to death, and not chenek, the regular death. So Amar Rava says, Motzi Shemra kamarta, you brought a case from Motzi Shemra. The second brisa was a Motzi Shemra. Shani Motzi Shemra de chidashu, the hanichnasu l'chuppah v'lo nivala. Ba'alma, Shani Motzi Shemra de chidashu. Motzi Shemra is a different case because it's a full chiddush. It's an innovative halacha. Because let's say a woman who had not undergone chuppah yet and hadn't hadn't consummated the marriage with her husband yet, and she was found to be to committed adultery, she gets the regular adultery penalty, which is chenek. V'ila motzi shemra b'skila. But when the case was motzi shemra, she gets skila. So because Motzi Shemra has a full special case, so the fact that Motzi Shemra in this brisa gets skila is no question, because Shayla is, well, so since there's a special death penalty, she'll keep the special death penalty. Oh, I think it's saying because so a regular case that wasn't a nara, if she committed adultery, she gets chenek, even though her status had changed from a unmarried woman to a married one, while a woman who didn't have chuppah to a woman who had chuppah. V'ila motzi shemra b'skila, v'ila motzi shemra b'skila. But motzi shemra, she has the death penalty of skila, and for the case of motzi shemra, she must have committed adultery before the wedding, and now it's after the wedding. So there has been some type of change in her status. So, so we say the death penalty stays the same. So Motzi Shemra is different. Amalei Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua Rava. Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua asked against Rava, Dilma ki chadis rachmana hechedolish tani gufa. But maybe when the Torah made this chiddush. The word chadis, the taf and the shin, are interchangeable in the Aramaic. So chadis is like chadish. When it made the chiddush, the innovative halacha of the Motzi Shemra gets that the Nar Marasa, in the case of Motzi Shemra, gets skila. Maybe that's the Torah only says it where her body didn't change. Aval hecha dishtani gufa lo chadis rachmana. But when her body changes, the Torah didn't make a chiddush. Meaning, to go from a status of an unmarried person or a arusa to a nesua is just a halachic status. But to go from a state of being a nara to being a bogeres, that's a big physical change. So maybe the Torah would agree with what Shayla said, or what Shayla said is reasonable, that the Shayla would agree that if there's only a halachic change of being not nesua or being a nesua, the death penalty doesn't change. But when her whole body changes from a halacha status of nara to a halachic status of bogeres, maybe the Torah wouldn't keep the death penalty of skila and would be chenek the way that Shayla said. So Ela Amar of Nachman Bar Yitzchak. So Nachman Bar Yitzchak tries to reconcile the two braysos. Ishtani v'lo ishtani tanoihi. When if her body changed or her body didn't change, is really a machlokas tanaim if she would keep the death penalty or the original death penalty of skila, or it would get changed. Itnan, because we learned in the brayso in Horios. Chatu achlo nismanu v'nismanu. So this is talking about someone who became the king or a nasi or a kohen gadol. So if they made an avera, a certain type of avera, they have to bring a certain korban. If they sinned as a korban, as a nasi or as a malach or as a kohen gadol, they have to bring a special korban. So the question is, what if they sinned before they became a kohen gadol, let's say, and then after they became the kohen gadol, they realized that they sinned? Would they have to bring the korban that they would have brought as a regular person, or would they bring the special korban of their current status as a kohen gadol or as a melech? So chatu achlo nismanu v'nismanu, if they sinned before they were appointed to be kohen gadol or to be king, and then they were appointed harehin ke'adjotos, and then they realized they had sinned earlier, they bring the regular korban that a regular person brings. It was a female sheep or goat. Rabbi Shimon Omer im noda lahem achlo nismanu chayavim. Rabbi Shimon says if they became aware that they had did this avera before they became appointed, they have to bring a korban as a regular person. Mishan nismanu peturim. But once they became appointed as a kohen gadol or as a king, they get pater. So Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak is saying that Rabbi Shimon holds when they had a significant change in status from regular person to kohen gadol or regular person to kohen gadol to melech, they don't bring the korban at all, because their body changed. Well, it's more of a halachic status. It wasn't a change in the. So then they don't have to bring a korban at all. So if you look in number 20 in the footnote, the last paragraph on 45a2, Archko says it's evident from Rashi's explanation that he considers the change from commoner to king or commoner to kohen gadol as a change in essence on the level of change from a nara to bogeres rather than merely a change in legal status. This is also the opinion of the Rashba. But Tosos, however, maintained that the difference between the change from Nar Bogeres and the change from Nabrusa to Nesua lies in the fact that the former is physical and the latter is not. Accordingly, they say that from a commoner to king is not a physical change, is more similar to an Arusa to a Nesua. So I actually mentioned something interesting about this, something Rav Yashaber mentioned, more of Hashkafa level, but would explain Kohen Gadol. I don't think it would. So Rav Yashaber point out in the Avodas about when he's discussing Avodas Yom Kippurim that the Kohen Gadol obviously has to take a tongue or whatever, but when he's holding a kol, but he also takes basically what Rav Yashaber said, and I'm forgetting the exact details where he said it, is that a Kohen Gadol to some extent becomes a vessel of the Beis Hamikdash when he becomes a Kohen Gadol, instead of just being a person who does avoda. To certain for certain things, he becomes like an actual vessel of the Beis Hamikdash. So with that, what Rav Yashaber said, we could understand Rashi very well, that a change from a regular person to a Kohen is actually a change in essence, as the article is saying it, not just a change in legal status. And now for a change from a regular person to a king, there's certain halachas about kings. Obviously, a king has different in regard to who they can marry is a little different. Obviously, Kohen Gadol also. No one's allowed to use their stuff after they die. A king has to get a haircut, every day. A king is not allowed to be mochel on his kavod. Like if they say, "Oh, you don't have to stand up for me," he's not listening. You must honor him even if he is, foregoing his honor. But still, all of those, for the most part, are legal distinctions, not a change in the essence of his person. Okay, so now we are on Mem Hamid Beis. So Aimer Dishamina Le Rabbi Shimon da Azal Af Basar Yediyah. But I could say that Rabbi Shimon holds that we follow also when he finds out about it. The Azal Basar Yediyah v'lo Azal Basar Chata Mishamasle. But what Rabbi Shimon say is din if after the time that he was informed about it, but not follow the time of the sin at all, would he even say this? Meaning Rabbi Shimon only said that the change in status is significant if he was informed or he realized that he made the Avera before he was appointed Kohen Gadol or appointed to but what if he found out about it after he became the king? Im kain laisi korban ki hashta. According to that, Rabbi Shimon should probably hold that he'd have to bring the special korban of a Kohen Gadol or the Kohen Gadol or the special Kohen of the Melech. Mashuach parvan asisar. If he's Kohen Gadol, it's Mashuach means the one who was anointed. So a Kohen Gadol was anointed with Shemin HaMishcha in the time of the first Beis HaMikdash. In the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, we didn't have the Shemin HaMishcha anymore. And the Nasi, the king, would bring a goat, a bull or a goat. For the Kohen Gadol brought a bull, and the king would bring a goat. So you can't say that Sheila's brisa fits with Rabbi Shimon, because Rabbi Shimon, based on what we know about Rabbi Shimon's opinion, he only said if he sinned as a commoner, and he was informed and he realized that he made this avera as a commoner, but he didn't bring his korban yet, and then he became appointed king of Kohen Gadol, then he doesn't bring the korban. But if he didn't know about his sin at all until he already became the king or became the Kohen Gadol, he would have to bring the special korban. So in which case, the fact that he had a change in his status didn't change. It does change what could happen to him. So that could fit with Shayla, who's saying that once she became a Bogeres, her death penalty changes from skila, which is a stricter thing, to chenek. So ha'amar le Rabbi Yochanan l'Tana. So Rabbi Yochanan had said to a certain Tana. Now it's important. So Rabbi Yochanan was an Amora. He was a very late student of Rabbi, but who was a Tana. But Rabbi Yochanan himself is really the second generation of Amoraim. So when it says here Tana, it's talking about the person who set over the Brisas and the Mishnayos, I should say, in the Beis Medrash. So we call the Tanaim the rabbis of the Mishnah, but in this case, the Gemara means that the Tana is the person in the Beis Medrash whose job was to memorize the Mishnayos perfectly and to say them over. And if someone asked them, they say, "What was this Mishnah that so and so said about this case?" They would tell you the Mishnah. They were the experts on the text of the Mishnah. Tani, you should learn the Bryce a little bit different. Tidon beskila. So he's changing the last part of Shayla's brisa that if she became a Bogeres, not that she gets chenek, strangulation, but she gets skila. She still gets skila, But in this case, there's three different types of skila: skila at her father's house, skila at the gate of the city, and then the regular skila in the regular execution place of the Beis Din. So it ends up that just because she became a bogeres, her death penalty didn't change. So now there's no contradiction between the two brises. Why should she get skila? Nara marasa amar Rahmana b'habogeresi. The Torah says that the Nara who had been engaged, who committed adultery, gets skila, and now she's no longer a Nara. Some Rabbi Law says Amar Kra Hanara. Hanara Shaisa Kvar. The pasuk says they take out the Nara. So he learns from Hanara Shaisa Kvar. She was previously a Nara. So what exactly is the brisa here? It's either because it says Hanara extra times in the pasuk, because it mentions Hanara several times in the pasuk. So when it mentions Hanara an extra time, we already know she's a Nara. So it tells us that the one, even if she's not a Nara anymore, but because she was a Nara at the time, she does get that death penalty. Amarle Reb Chanina Rabbi Ilah. Reb Chanina asked against Rabbi Ilah, Ihachi milka nami loka me'asoli nami lishalim. If she gets the same death penalty because it happened while she was a Nara, if so, if the husband's claim was false, he should get lashes and he should have to pay for giving his false claim, because even though she's not a Nara now, she had previously been a Nara. To Amarle, Rachmana Nitzlan Mehai Daita. So Rilah says Hashem should save us from this logic, meaning he was saying that what you're saying is completely wrong. Or this Rashi says, and this Rashi is an extremely important, according to what Rashi seems to be saying. He was very upset about him, about his reason, because he thought it was based on Havanas Alev, the understanding of the heart, which we could also translate as logic. So if you're just trying to explain Gzeres HaKasav, a pasuk based on logic, you're going to be wrong, because our logic, our human logic, is not the same as the divine logic. So don't use logic when you're trying to make a drasha. Just use the drashos that we have and the rules of making drashos to come up with a conclusion, not logic. Adarabba, Rab Hanania said back, Hashem should save us from your logic. B'taimamai. So what's the reason that she still gets the original punishment even though she's no longer an Arab, but the husband only gets a punishment for being a liar about it if she was still an Arab, but not if she became a Bogeres? Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avin v'itema Rabbi Yitzchak bar Abba zo masa garmula. The woman, her acts caused this punishment. V'zeh akimas fasav garmula. But this one, the crookedness of his lips caused him to get a punishment. Because if what he said was true, she committed adultery. And if she didn't commit adultery, her husband ended up saying something false. Zu masya garmula kishahi zanai nara zanai. This one, the woman, that if her deeds caused her to get punishment when she committed the adultery, she was only a Nara at the time that the adultery took place. But the husband, if he was ended up lying about it, really she was still a virgin and she hadn't committed adultery. The crookedness of his lips caused his sin. When would he become chayev? At the time that he made his false statement. And at that time when he made a statement, she was already a bogeres, and therefore this whole special halacha doesn't take place, because the whole halacha is for when he speaks falsely only applies when she's a nara. Okay, Tana Rabbanan, we're at 45b2. We're about 15 lines almost from the top. about 15 lines from the top on Mem Hamid Beis. Taner Rabbi, we learned to the Brisa. Nara Hamarasa Shezinsa Soknosa Pesach Beisaviha. Engaged, she had Erison, she had received the ring. A Nara who committed adultery, she gets skila by the doorway of her father's house. Ein la Pesach Beisav, Soknosa Pesach Sharayer. If her father doesn't have a house, she gets put to death by the gate of the city, of the gate of the city. If the city is majority pagans, then she gets put to death by the Beis-Dins, by the door to the Beis-Din. Kiyota b'davar. Similarly, ata omer, you would say ha'oved avodas kochavim, someone who worshipped an idol, so they get skila. Soklin osal shaar she'avad bo, they would get skila by the gate of where they worship the avodah zarah. And if the city was majority idol worshippers, then the person would get executed with skila by the door of the Beis Din. Tosus points out that it's the city in which they worshipped avodah zarah. And he also points out when it says by the door of the Beis Din, it doesn't mean literally by the door of the Beis Din, but Beis Din there was some distance that the Gemara in Sanhedrin says that they would walk the person from the Beis Din to the place where they would do the executions. So there'd be time for the Chachamim, the members of the Sanhedrin, to think of a reason to not put him to death. So it wasn't literally at the doorway of the Beis Din. Menani Mili Ditan Rabbanan. Menani Mili. So how do we know this? These halachos that where the person gets executed. Ditan Rabbanan, because we learned in a brisa sha'arecha. So the pasuk says, by someone who does avodah zarah, you will take v'alteisa seishahu asaisha hias asher asra sadavar razel sha'arecha asaisha uskaltam bavani v'mesu. You will take that man or that woman that did this evil thing to the gates, the man or the woman, and you will kill them by stoning. You will stone them with stones, and they will die. So sharecha zu shar she'avad bo. When it says your gate, it means the gate that they served avodah zarah in that place. Ata omer shar she'avad bo, meaning if they served it in a certain building, you would do it by that building, or if it was in a certain field, whatever, it would be near that field. Even though field isn't a shaar, but it's related to the place in which they worship avodah zarah. So the Gemara asks, "Shar she'avad ba'oino ela shar she'nidon bo." Does it mean the gate where they committed their sin, or does it mean the gate where they were judged? Meaning, does it mean maybe sharacha just means where the Beis Din, the regular execution place for the Beis Din? So nemar sharach lamata v'nemar sharach lamala. We learn exer shava because it says sharacha in this pasuk that we just read, and it said sharacha in a few psukim earlier. And that was pasuk hey and pasuk gimel. It said kimatzei bekir bracha b'chat sharacha shar Hashem nosen lach isha o isha shar yasas harabe ne'ashavacha lavor brisa. When you will find in your gates, in your midst, in one of your gates, that Hashem your God has given you a man or a woman who has done evil in the eyes of Hashem to violate His covenant, meaning avodah zarah. So where would you have found this person who's doing avodah zarah? Wherever the place was that they were worshiping avodah zarah. So just like in pasuk beis, when it says the gate, your gate, it means the gate, and literally in the location where they worship avodah zarah. So therefore, 3 psukim later, when it says about executing them in your gate, it also means the gate in which they worshipped avodah zarah. Davar achir, another drasha that we can make from this. Sharechav lo shari of ovdei kochavim, or it seems that we're making both drashas. And another drasha is sharecha, your gates, but not in the gates if the city is a city of ovdei avodah zarah. So now the Gemara asks, "Hai sharecha, hai afkite." You can't use the drasha that your gates excludes the gates if it's a city that's majority non-Jews, because you already just made a drasha of She'arecha to tell you that it's the place where they actually worship Avodah Zarah. So once you're already using it for that drasha, you can't use it for another drasha. So the Gemara says, Im kain lema krashar, my sharecha shmamina tarti. If we only needed to know that the place that he gets killed is the gate where he did it, just could have said the word shaar at the gate. How come we had to say sha'arecha, your gate? So we learned two halachas. It's the gate where you worship Avodah Zarah, and it has to be a gate where the majority of the Jews, of the people in the city, are not idol worshippers. In this case, meaning non-Jews. I'm just saying that because there's a special halacha of if the majority of people in a Jewish city worship Avodah Zarah, and that's called an irani dachas. The whole city got convinced to worship Avodah Zarah. So once the majority of the people in the city worship Avodah Zarah, they no longer get skila. They only get chenek, I think. So they get a more lenient punishment, but then also all the belongings of the city has to get destroyed. No one could use any benefit from it. So in Ashkelon avodas kochavim. So now we have a drasha to understand why for the debt penalty of idol worship, that takes place by the place where they worshipped, or at the gate of the city, or for a Jewish city. Menara Maras Manolan. But the first case in that brisa was talking about where you would put to death a Nara Marasa, her father's house, the doorway of her father's house, or the gate of the city. But if it's a non-Jewish city, they put her to death just in the regular Beis Din's execution place. So how do we know that an Amarasa, that's the halacha? Am Rabbi Abo, Gomer Pesach mi Pesach. So we learned Pesach from the opening of her father's house, from Pesach, the opening of the Mishkan. U Pesach mishar. And we learn from the opening of the Mishkan to the gate of the Mishkan. So Rashi says in the Mishkan in Bamidbar Perek Dalet, it says Al Masach Pesach Shaar HaChatzer. So just like the doorway by the Mishkan, it also mentions the word Shaar. So also when it talks about Pesach, the doorway by the Nara Marasa's father, it also is connected with the gate. Vishar misharecha, and now we learn the word Shaar from Nara Marasa, from Sharecha, from the Avodah Zarah, which is the drasha that we just learned. So it's a bit of a Rashi says asmachta d'Rabbanan ba'alma. So Rashi makes it sound like this isn't a real limud because you're learning one from another, one from another, one from another, and then this from Avodah Zarah. Hello. 6:15. Okay, great. You're welcome. Okay, so now we turn to Mem Hamad Bays in the Art Scroll, and we are about 14 lines up from the bottom of Mem Hamad Bays. The first one line is Mishar. Taner Rabbanan, we learned in the Brisa. Motzi Shemra Lokev and Osen Measela. If someone falsely accused his wife of being a Nara Marasa, of having committed adultery, and he ended up that he was lying, he gets two punishments. He gets lashes, and he gives 100 shekel or 100 sel. Now, the Gemara in many places, especially in Makos, says that Motzi Shemra is a special din because normally you only get one punishment. You'd either have, and we actually learned this at the beginning of the third parak. You either get lashes or you get money. You don't have to do both. But Motzi Shemra is a pasuk where it's explicitly said in the Torah you get both punishments. And the Gemara says in many places we can't learn from that because since it's a special case explicit in the Torah, it's a chiddush, and we can't learn anything from it. We can't try to learn a kavachomer or gzer shava from this, but he gets two punishments. Rabbi Huda Omer lolkos loka mikol makom me'asela bal nosen labal ino nosen. Rabbi Yehuda says he's always going to get 100 shekel, but in regard to paying the fine of 100, if he consummated the marriage with his wife, he has to pay the 100 shekel. Lo bal lo ino nosen. But if he didn't consummate the marriage, but they had chuppah, and he claimed that she wasn't a virgin. How he know that, I'm not sure. But if he didn't consummate the marriage, then Eino no saying he doesn't have to pay the 100 shekel. So kamiflagi be plukta Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov Rabbana. So the machlokas between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda about whether they always pay, whether the Motzi Shemra, the husband always pays the 200 shekel or not, is based on the machlokas between Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov and the Rabbana. V'hachi kamar, and this is what the brisa means. Hamotzi Shemra loka v'nosin me'asela, bein ba, bein shelo ba, k'Rabbana. If he gave a false slander against his wife that she had committed adultery when he was lying about it, and she hadn't, and she's still a virgin, he gets lashes, and he gives 100 shekel, whether he had consummated the marriage with her or not, K'Rabbanan, according to the Rabbanan's opinion. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Lilkos loka mikol makom, he always gets lashes, whether he consummated the marriage or not. Me'asela, in regard to the 100 sela, Baal nasan, if he consummated the marriage with her, he has to pay the money. Lo baal eno nasan, if he didn't consummate the marriage, he doesn't have to pay the 100 shekel. Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov, according to the opinion of Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov, that the whole halacha of Motzi Shemra is when he already consummated the marriage and then said that she wasn't a virgin. So Rashi points out here that so it's interesting. So Rashi says, for Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov's opinion, that Motzi Shemra was talking about when he consummated the marriage with her, but the lashes, he's liable even if he's going to get the lashes even if he didn't consummate the marriage, because the avera isn't Motzi Shemra, which needs the marriage to be consummated according to Rabbi Lazar Yaakov. But there's a halacha lo selech rachel b'yamecha. You can't go as a tail bearer in your people. So since that's a separate losase, he gets lashes for that losase. Ikeda Amri, but others explain the brayso a little bit differently. Kula Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov. The machlokas between the Tanakam and Rabbi Yehuda is both according to the opinion of Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov. V'hachi kamar, and this is what the brayso means. Hamotzi Shemra loka v'nosen me'asala v'hu shabal. If Motzi Shemra gets the 100 lashes, gets 39 lashes and pays 100 shekel if he consummated the marriage. Rabbi Yehuda mer lokos loka mikol makom. But Rabbi Yehuda says that he always gets lashes even if he didn't consummate the marriage. So then they were asked, so Rabbi Yehuda lokos loka mikol makom. Does Rabbi Yehuda really holds that the husband will always get lashes for this false claim? But we learned in the brayso, Rabbi Yehuda omer ba loka lo ba al eno loka. Rabbi Yehuda said in a different brayso that he only gets lashes if he consummated the marriage. But if he didn't consummate the marriage, he didn't get lashes. So we see clearly that Rabbi Yehuda holds that the whole halacha of Motzi Shemra applies when if he consummated the marriage and then he makes the claim. So it's not just the money part, even the lashes part. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak loka makas mardus murder rabbanan. So when Rabbi Yehuda here says that he gets lashes, it doesn't mean he gets 39 lashes according to the Torah law. He gets rabbinic lashes for doing something improper. So Rabbi Yehuda is saying, in this case, lokos loka mikol makom, in whichever case he gets lashes, I guess, so the word mikol makom is telling us that it's not Torah lashes, but it's rabbinic lashes. Even if the man didn't consummate the marriage, he's going to get lashes anyway. Okay. So now we're on Mem Vav Amad Aleph. Rapapa gives a different reason. My ba loka de tani hasam. What does it mean that the husband gets lashes that we've learned in that brisa? Mama. In that case, lashes doesn't mean lashes. It means he has to make the monetary payment. So the Gemara says, Malchus, is he going to call a monetary payment lashes? That doesn't make any sense. Lashes is lashes. Payment is payment. How could you say lashes when you mean payment? So the Gemara says, yes, you could call monetary payment lashes. Vatanya, because we learned in a brayso, Omer Chetzi Erki Alai. So remember, erichin are a vow that someone takes to give us his value to the Beis Hamikdash. So the Torah in the end of the Sefer Vayikra lists the amount. So every person's value, depending on your age and male or female, there's a certain set value in the Torah. Ha'omer chetzi erki alai. If he says half of my value, I'm obligating myself to pay half my value to the Beis Hamikdash. Nosin chatzi erko. The Tanna Kama says he gives half his value. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Omer Loka v'nosin erech shalim. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda says he gets lashes, but he has to give his full valuation. So Loka amai. Why does he get lashes? Amar Rav Papa says Loka be'erech shalim, meaning he gets hit with a full penalty, that he has to pay the full amount. So Loka in this case doesn't mean lashes; it means he gets hit with having to make a full payment. So too here, Rav Papa is answering that when Rabbi Yehuda says Loka, it means he has to pay. My time, what's the reason that he has to pay the full value, even though he only vowed the half value? We make a gzera if he gives the half the value of his whole body, lest he make a declaration, I'll give the whole value of half of my body. However, if you pledge half your body is going to include, meaning there's halacha that if part of the body that you would donate, or say that, the head of my sheep, it goes to the Beis Hamikdash, what happens if you would cut the head off the sheep? The whole thing would die. So if you would say something, make some type of pledge like that, where the part of the body that you're claiming would includes the entire animal's life, because if you would take away that thing, the thing would die, the entire animal would be consecrated. So if you would say the full value, the value of half my body, well, half your body is going to include something that you would die from without it. So therefore, when you say half my body, you have to pay your full amount. So since if you would say I'm pledging the value of half my body, he has to pay for the whole body. Even when he says I'm giving half the pledge of my whole body, he has to pay for his whole value. So the word here in this case, loka, even though he shouldn't have to pay it, but we're imposing a fine on him to safeguard a different halacha. I guess you would consider it a getter, that it's offense to strengthen the Torah. And so the word loka is used to talk about a monetary payment. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in the Brisa of Anshu also. So the husband who falsely claimed that he didn't find her to be a virgin, the pasuk of Anshu also, they punish him. Zemamon. So Anshu means the monetary payment. V'yisru, the word yisru, which is from the word like musar, Zel Malchus. That teaches us that he gets lashes. So Bishlam of Anshu Zemamon, Dixi Anshu so may Kesuvos no lianara. We understand that the word Anshu is a monetary payment because it says they will punish him 100 silver pieces, and he will give it to the father of the maiden. How do we know that the word v'yisru, which is from the word musar, implies a physical punishment of lashes? Rabbi Baba says, "Lamanu yisru mi yisru, v'yisru mi ben, uben mi bin, v'haya im bin hakos harasha." So v'yisru here, we also learned v'yisru by. There's the Rashi here. It says that by Ben Sora Mora, while the wayward and rebellious son v'yisru also, they will take him to Beis Din and give him musar, malahalan ben imo, afkan ben imo. So just like Ben Sora Mora, the son is with him, so too here we have the word ben here by the Motzi Shem Rava, and in the case of Ben Sora Mora, they give him lashes before they put him to death. And in the pasuk of lashes, it says "Vayayim bin hakos harasha," when you lash the wicked person, which even though it's by that's talking about lashes by Adam Zomimim. So is similar to the drasha we saw in the previous Amud, that there's like a chain of 4 drashos, this word from that word, that word from that word, and that the last word is talking about lashes. So therefore, the word v'yisru it's not directly ever written, but we can make this chain, instead of a chain reaction, and for a nuclear bomb, is a chain reaction for a drasha. So let's leave it here. About 11 lines from the top of Memvav Amud Aleph. And